What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Jonathan. Ow! It's Wednesday, and you don't know what that means. Anyway, you know what that means. It's time for what a pew 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 pew. Yeah. Okay. So, few things. It's Wednesday evening. I know I had family stuff happen, so that's fine. For the side of my family who watches this and is confused, you can ask me, but it's I have talked to interested parties and they'd prefer it not be broadcasted on the internet, so that's fine. Anyway, and then for all you other normal people, I'm a person too and stuff happens, so Wednesday night. This one-off is inspired by Civil War Reconstruction South, America, Alabama specifically. I bring that up now as opposed to after because I read it myself. I tried to do voices relatively, respectfully. I didn't do anything that was stereotypical or, in my opinion, offensive. But in case anyone is worried and thinking that that was my intention, it was not. I apologize if it is. Cancel me if you want, but A, there's 24 subscribers, and B, come on. I'm just a dude making stories and reading. Get really mad at me for something like that. It's whatever. But yeah, so listen, I hope you enjoy, and then we'll talk more after.
The White Bastard, Part 1, by Jonathan Howe. Read to you by Jonathan Howe. Newport, Alabama, the only town in the South where white men respects the Negroes, William explained to Clarence. Your first time here might be disorienting, but you get used to it after a bit. Clarence nodded slowly. It was odd. He looked around the main street bustling with activity. People of both colors, a surprising amount of colored folks too, lived like nothing was the issue. They went into the same shops, walked on the same parts of the road. Clarence even saw some children of both colors playing together. Despite the apparent utopia, Clarence could see the facade slipping in some areas. The white adults, who walked alone most of the time, would occasionally give colored folks a glare when they thought no one was looking. And this is our destination, William said, stopping before an inn. Clarence halted, almost running into William. The caring matron was a 3-story building, quite tall for a remote town in Alabama. The mistress is excited to have you. The first floor was a restaurant, as most establishments of this nature. The pair went directly to the bar counter, William giving a wave to the young white woman behind. She smiled and walked into the back. William moved to an open table, taking a seat without asking. Are you really allowed to do that? Clarence asked, nervously eyeing the other patrons. Plenty of disgruntled white men sat around the bar, giving him angry looks. I absolutely can, William said nonchalantly. The mistress saved this table for us specifically. He's right, you know, a new voice said from behind the bar. Out of the back came an older white woman in a brilliant blue dress, both beautiful yet functional. William took off his hat and bowed towards the woman. Mistress Callahan. She beamed at him, rolling her eyes a little. You can stop being so formal. He shrugged, putting his hat back on. Now, Mistress Callahan said, looking back to Clarence, take a seat. She gestured him to the same side of the booth as William, taking the opposite side for herself. I'm sorry, I've forgotten to introduce myself, Clarence stammered. My name is Clarence Freeman, I'm well aware. Mistress Callahan interjected. I'm the one who requested your presence. Clarence let his jaw go slack for a moment. Of all the things he'd seen today, a white woman being so direct, as well as being the person in charge of asking for him? That does beg the question, ma'am, Clarence continued. Why did you ask for me? She smiled, gesturing around at nothing in particular. Well, I'm a fan of your writings, and I thought it might be nice for you to do a piece on Newport and the White Bastard. Clarence, you certainly want to know why such a town can exist in the heart of Alabama. Has William not told you yet about the White Bastard? Clarence shook his head slowly. I was getting to that, but we only just arrived, William explained apologetically. The mistress clucked disapprovingly. No wonder poor Clarence looks so lost. Care to enlighten me? He asked. Over food, if you don't mind a touch more waiting. He nodded, scanning the room for signs of this white bastard. Other than the odd behaviors of the white people, nothing seemed out of place. While waiting for her food, Mistress Callahan asked Clarence all sorts of questions about being a colored journalist in the North. After a few minutes of hesitant answers, Clarence warmed up to the matronly woman and her conversation. For the first time in his life, it felt like a white person really saw Clarence as a person. So your father escaped his plantation only to come back during the war between states? Mistress Callahan asked. Clarence beamed. That was the story he always told was so fascinating that it was my first piece of writing. Telling his story is what convinced me to become a writer in the first place. Well, you'll have to send it down. The mistress cut off as a bartender brought out 3 plates of food for the table. William and Clarence both bowed their heads in a quick, silent prayer before eating. As they ate, Clarence could feel tensions building around him. The mistress and William talked less, not just because they ate, but also in trepidation. When his plate was mostly clear, Clarence broke the silence. Now that we've discussed my life as well as Eton, I'd be interested to know about Newport and this white bastard. His words echoed louder than Clarence intended, and the restaurant went silent around him. He glanced around. The white folks glared daggers at him. Did I do something wrong? He asked quietly. Mistress Callahan shook her head. Not quite, but Oddtown vigilante is a sore subject. Vigilante? Clarence asked. Mistress Callahan nodded. Surely you've wondered why colored folks aren't in fear of the white man so far south, William stated. Surely you wondered why colored folks aren't in fear of the white man so far south, Clarence stated. William stated. The answer is the white bastard. They're afraid of a vigilante, Clarence clarified. William nodded. 5 years ago, someone started killing white men who committed crimes against colored folk, Mistress Callahan explained. No one could see who it was, so the first few times it was blamed on the black folks of the town. That is, until the secondary deaths started happening, William jumped in. Men who'd been witnesses to the first deaths turned up dead with notes written in blood, warning all to tell the truth. So they did know who was behind it, Clarence asked, confused. Mistress Callahan shook her head. Still, no one knows who the white bastard is, but the witnesses were leaving out a crucial detail. The forearms and skin around the eyes were clearly white. Clarence raised an eyebrow. A white person defending us, he said in awe. I thought Abe would be the only one. They all bowed their heads in a moment of reverence before continuing. Anyway, William continued, the white bastard continued fighting for us, and eventually the crimes against our people have stopped. Mostly, the mistress jumped in, her voice sharp. They haven't stopped for good because people still see our groups differently. Prejudices run deep, ma'am, Clarence said. It's going to take more than one vigilante to change anything. Which is why we asked for you, Mistress Callahan said. We want you to write an article about Newport. Show the world that it is possible. Is that wise? Clarence asked. Aren't you worried it will just bring other white folk of the South here against the white bastard? If they can find him in the bastard's forest, William said with a chuckle. It's amazing there. Many of folk have gone in after the white bastard, and none have returned. Clarence mulled over the idea. On one hand, it was an interesting story, but on the other hand, he wasn't sure if he wanted to mess with the delicate balance Newport had found. Mistress Callahan and William waited patiently, not pressing Clarence for an answer. I'd like to do more research, if it's all the same to you, Clarence said finally. Mistress Callahan nodded. I can put you up for as long as you need. Clarence nodded his thanks. I can take your stuff up to the room, William said. Clarence stepped out of the booth to let William work. Despite his trepidation, a feeling of excitement bubbled up inside. A place where a white man defends the colored, he thought. Who knew?
All right. So yeah, I hope you understand what I'm saying about the voices. We've been watching the Gilded Age, and I kind of basically just semi-imitated the voices of the black characters I've seen on the show. Again, I say semi-imitated because my reading voice is pretty monotone anyway, so I kind of just tried to use some of similar inflections. Again, if you want to get mad at me, there's not much I can do. What do you want me to do? Hire a bunch of people for one random... Well, I say one-off. This one, as you can tell, is going to be a multi-parter. Probably 3 parts. We'll see what it's like when I'm writing them. But either way, aside from my one concern of the internet getting mad at me for something that I can't really change and don't really care to change, I really enjoyed this week's. I got it off of watching the Gilded Age thinking about what if there was like a town somewhere in the South that just had one white person who was a vigilante and just like stood up to the white mob who just did whatever. And that's what this whole series is going to be about, and kind of just discovering that and exploring that. So if you enjoyed it, hit that like button and share this with your friends, or not. Do whatever, you're adults. Anyway, Nick, goodbye.